Hi, submarine friends. Well, while I wait for my hydraulic pump, which might be here today when my wife gets home from town, hopefully she brings that pump with her. So anyways, while I wait, I decided to make another part. So the submarine needs an emergency drop weight. So, if all else fails, I can drop 500 pounds off the bottom of the submarine and it'll just go shooting to the surface. Don't quote me on the 500 pounds. You have to be careful with the size of a drop weight. The rule is when you release the drop weight, you still need enough ballast weight so on the surface, the pilot and passenger can stand on the deck of the submarine without it rolling over. So you can't have, like I have to add 1,700 pounds to the bottom of this thing in order for it to submerge. So if I had a 1,700 pound drop weight, it goes shooting to the surface, but then it tips over, so that's no good. So you have to be careful about that sort of thing. Anyways, I'm going to be probably 350 to 500 pounds somewhere in there. So the way it works is, this is hot off the lathe. So this piece here, this is a threaded nipple, a weld-in threaded nipple, and it gets welded to the bottom of the hull like here. Not literally right there, but it actually goes in the forward section of the hull that is missing right now. So this gets welded in the bottom of the hull. Obviously there's a hole in the hull. This here used to be a brass pressure relief valve from this propane tank. So all I did is I machined it out, and then I machined 2 O-ring grooves. I like doubling up on the O-rings. And so that piece screws into this, just like so. Now that's in the bottom of the hull now. So then this piece goes in here, bada boom, just like so. And I just pressure tested this by screwing this assembly into a valve that this fits, and on the other end of the valve I put an air fitting, and I tested this to 300 feet, just like right now, just a few minutes ago with soapy water, and it's fine. So then, what happens so this is sticking, so now this threaded portion right here, so it's got a 5/8 fine thread section on the bottom here, and that screws into the drop weight, okay? So then, let's say I'm stuck on the bottom of the lake, I've used all my air, I've used my hand pump, I've done everything, it's time to drop the weight. So all I do is I turn this, and it threads out of that weight on the bottom. As soon as it threads out, it drops. Now, that's all well and good, but because there's water pressure on this side of the hull, this thing here will go shooting into the hull if there's no retainer on the bottom. And since I don't have a retainer on the bottom, I will have a piece that comes up and over and down so that it can just come up 1/8 of an inch or something. So I just have room to turn this. And what I'm going to do is drill holes through this nut so that I can just put a rod through, and I can crank it, pull it out, stick it in, crank it. Because otherwise this thing here will come shooting inside the sub. So this is about as simple as you can get. Now some people, what they do, instead of having this threaded, they'll have like a hook. Like my deep worker submarine there, which is a pretty fancy submarine, it just has a hook, and that hook rotates. But what I don't like about that is I don't travel down the highway to go to lakes. I travel on bush roads, logging roads. So I'm on really rough roads, plus the highway. But just a hook like that to me is risky, because if it's bouncing and shaking, it could rotate. I guess you could lock it in here, but I just don't get that warm, fuzzy feeling from that. I like having a threaded nut in there. As long as I use a stainless steel nut and I keep it greased, there's no problem at all. So that's how I'm going to do it. So this just turns, unthreads out of the nut that's welded to the weight, drops off, submarine goes shooting to the surface. I've never experienced a surfacing event with that kind of thrust. Now I do know I've done hard surfaces where I pump a whole bunch of air into a tank and let it expand and blow out as it's going to the surface. And it's actually a little disappointing. The sub comes out of the water, maybe a foot, but that energy is lost immediately when it hits the surface. So it's not as dramatic as you would think. Nothing like in the movies, that's for sure. So wish me luck. Hopefully my pump arrives today and I can test my hydraulic drive. Ciao.